Nobody cares about your career as much as you do. Like, regardless of agility, regardless of what we need, like, your career is it's yours, right? So you need to be in the driving seat there. But what we can commit to is enabling that.
And like ultimately what we're trying to do is map the capability and skills of our workforce with the right work so that we drive the best outcomes.
That was such an eye-opener for me, right? Because actually that is a quick win.
Now, we cannot have a conversation about the future of the industry without talking about AI, and you touched off it there a moment ago.
What's the impact that AI is going to have on people's roles in the future, and then how do we sort of plan for that?
Hi everybody, my name is Caoimhe Carlos and I lead the Global Customer Success function at Udemy. And here with me today we've got Niamh O'Connell from Flutter. Niamh, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, happy to be here. So I'm Niamh, I'm the talent director with PokerStars, and we're a key brand in the Flutter portfolio of brands, and we work in the online gaming space.
Love that, Niamh. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us today. So today we're here to talk about taking a skills-based approach to career development, something that many organizations and leaders are thinking about today. And I know that this is something that you've been very focused on inside PokerStars and the Flutter Group at large. Niamh, can you tell us a little bit about why this particular topic resonates with you?
Yeah, so this is a real kind of passion of mine. And I think it really resonates because just I think work is changing. Like it's quite different now when we think about like our parents' generation and that idea of kind of having a linear career or staying in a role for quite a long time. That has completely changed, and I think that there's no industry really that hasn't been affected by that. And I think that the term that I hear a lot and I really like is this idea of squiggly careers, and how the idea of kind of every move being an upward move is maybe a thing of a past, and we need to be much more open to sort of lateral moves, and really think about portfolio careers and what are the kind of experiences that you need to curate or collate in order for you to get to the role that you want in the future. And so skills, I think, is really emerging now as the currency of work. And in the past, really, where we thought about one worker to one role, now we start to think about a person who is a collection of skills, experiences, traits, etc. And then we start to break down work into its tasks. And you start to see a lot more opportunities, I think, in terms of how you kind of get work done, and then how you kind of can have a really kind of fulfilling career. So that's kind of what sort of ignited my interest in it. And we've been on a little bit of a journey with this in PokerStars and kind of the wider Flutter group as well over the past few years.
I love that concept of the squiggly career and the portfolio career. I think it's so true for how we all work today. And it also makes, if we're going to work till we're 70 or 65 or maybe even 80, given how life expectancy is going, the concept of doing the same thing forever isn't actually that exciting. And so I love the fact that the portfolio career and this concept of having a squiggly career gives you more opportunity to kind of flex all the various different skills and things like that you have. So yeah, I'm really excited to hear about how this has been going with Flutter. But before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty on it, can you tell me a little bit about kind of what the business problem was, I guess, that you were trying to solve when you kind of started to formulate your idea around what a program that spoke to this could look like inside PokerStars and Flutter?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So one thing that was sort of emerging was these frequent requests to support with competency frameworks. So various functions would reach out and ask for support from like my learning team or my talent team to support the development of competency frameworks. And there were quite a lot of competency frameworks already up and running in the business. And, like we would have kind of job families within PokerStars that align with job families within another brand, and competency frameworks that were being developed could actually look quite different. So that was sort of something that like I was quite curious about in terms of like what was the problem that we were trying to solve with competency frameworks. It was around setting clear expectations with colleagues about how they could progress their career, and just having something that was a little bit more structured and consistent, so that managers could kind of have better conversations and be realistic about, okay, in order for you to get a promotion or to move to this next level, here's some of the things that I need to see. So that was one part. And then the other part was we had data from our engagement survey that was telling us that colleagues were kind of scoring lower on the career path question. So we have a question that asks, I can see a path to grow my career at Flutter. And our engagement scores would be really good. Our scores around kind of growth and learning, mentoring, really, really good. But that career pathing score was just scoring a little bit lower. And so again, like kind of understanding what was going on there, it was just not being clear about what I need to do to get to the next level, and not being really clear even on like how I navigate a business like ours. Like we operate in a federated model, so you know brands are kind of fairly autonomous, regions are fairly autonomous. So how can I take advantage of the scale of this like organization to grow my career? I don't really know how to do that, and a lot of it was kind of being driven by relationships.
The way that the world of work is transforming so quickly, being able to deploy your talent in a really agile way to meet the business's demands is something that a lot of organizations are trying to grapple with. So yeah, I think obviously the model for the Flutter Group means that you're kind of you're almost forced into solving for that problem sooner than most. So can you talk a little bit about, so the program obviously has been off the ground for a little while now, and getting the business buy-in, I think, was pretty straightforward. There were clear reasons why the business wanted to invest here. Can you talk about kind of some of the ways that you've thought about driving stickiness and engagement with the program at the ground level and at the manager level to ensure that it was successful?
So to sort of think about the culture, so we've called this program Career Focus, and then within that there are several elements to it, and I think there's no one magic thing that is going to kind of support that, right? So I think that there's various elements, and kind of coming at those from different angles, and not necessarily all together, but definitely kind of layering is kind of important here. So the elements of our program were kind of 4 pillars. So the first was really kind of understanding insights on supply and demand, right? So where are we likely to kind of need talent in the future, and then kind of what do we know about the talent that we have today? That proved and continues to prove a lot more challenging than it sounds. But initially, like, we were kind of thinking, okay, supply and demand, if we can understand that, that's going to help us to move people around the business. If we know more about our people, if we know more about the roles, we can start to think about like talent matching, talent brokering, etc. So that was the first pillar. The second pillar was really around resources. So if we think about like that problem that the business was trying to solve around expectations and around career development, like a competency framework, I'm not saying they're not helpful, like they are helpful, but it's just because work changes so quickly that they go out of date quite quickly. And also I think when we think about like the agile nature of work changes quite quickly. So like a lot of people will, like if you ask them what they do every day, like there'll be a part of their job that's been sort of bolted on that's not actually captured in the job description, but it might be because it's a job that needs to be done, or they have the skills to do it, or they're having a stretch opportunity, etc. So I think like helping people to just have better conversations and better skills around proactively managing their careers was really important. And so we created a whole framework around like it's basically called Career Focus, and it's 5 elements of career planning. And we really help people to get proactive about what do they want, where do they want to go, what is it that they like love doing, where can they add value, where do they see themselves going, and then helping them to create the plan to get there. And then supporting that, then we upskill the managers on how to kind of facilitate that conversation. So we really have this like, element that it needs to be driven by you. Nobody cares about your career as much as you do. Like regardless of agility, regardless of what we need, like your career is it's yours, right? So you need to be in the driving seat there. But what we can commit to is enabling that, right? We can commit to better conversations, better opportunities, etc. So really kind of helping the manager to play a key role there was important. And we do career clinics, we do coaching, we have a career week, we do loads of stuff on this now. So that's kind of like tackling some of the cultural stuff around, maybe not consciously, but like expecting to be developed. Like really, today I think people need to be much more proactive and thoughtful about their kind of career development. And then the other 2 elements that we thought were quite important were really how do we kind of close skills gaps as they arise. So again, like if I'm thinking about the competency framework, how long does the competency framework take to develop? And then, you'll have a request to the L&D team going, okay, well, we've identified a gap in this area. Can you help me to close the gap? The time that it takes to do that, to build something, to deliver an initiative is it's too long, like, to close a skills gap that's critical. So we started to think about, right, how do we kind kind of help our L&D team to use their expertise, but to kind of effectively scale like what they can do. So accelerators was one element of this, and effectively what that is it's identifying subject matter experts in the business and upskilling them on how to share their knowledge. And actually, we partnered with Udemy on this. So, so our account manager like helped us with this and actually delivered some sessions to us in this train the trainer program. But we take the cohort through a several week training program. We teach them about good practice, about facilitation. We teach them how to curate learning paths. We teach them how to create like a great video or a webinar, etc. So they can close those skills gaps at the point of need. But we're confident that they are delivering kind of quality training that we know is going to make an impact. And then the last element then really, and I think this is so important, and again, it's not an easy one. I would definitely say we're early on in this one, but it's really thinking about how can you help people to curate the experiences they need to move to the next level. And like, I think this is just so important when you're an internal candidate. If you go for a role internally that's been opened internally and externally, you are going to compete with people who already have experience in that role outside. Like that is, you know, because when I bring in an external candidate, like that's what I'm paying for. I'm paying for the risk that I don't know that person. So I'm looking for that proven track record. Whereas you internally are saying, I'm putting my hand up and I want to move to next level. So understanding that means that you now need to demonstrate that you can be effective at that next level or in that next role. So starting to think about then, how do we help people to get the experiences that they need to demonstrate that when a role becomes available? Also to build the networks as well. So like, you know, when a role becomes available, you hear about it instead of the first time you meet the hiring manager is in that interview, you actually maybe already have a relationship with them. So we've gone down the path of, well, we've done a few things. So one is just thinking about stretch assignments and really giving clear guidance on what those are. But like we've actually started now to pilot and experiment with gigs, and how do we like help people to do a different role or experience a different role for a short period of time. And that might be a couple of days a week. It might be as a comment, it could be an international rotation, etc. So coming back to your questions about how do we get buy-in for this, if you think about all those 4 levels, there's probably something in there for everybody. The tech stuff is hard, like it is really hard. It takes time, and especially like when you're in a big organization and you need to think about tech or build it, or, you know, like that takes a while. And I think you do have to prove things small. And then I think just sharing those kind of success stories. So like, you know, sharing where people are moving. We've seen a real improvement in our career pathing score. So we've improved that by 115%. We've got the traction here. The feedback is this is great, it's meaningful, this is helpful, and so now I think people are bought in, and there's there's appetite to do more.
I love that, and I love the way that with everything that you've done with this program, you've really thought about how to empower the L&D function to be a partner to the business, to give the business the tools to drive this themselves. So it's a real, you know, like whether it's through the accelerators program and the SMEs, whether it's through actually teaching your colleagues around how to take control of their own career. It hasn't just been L&D or the talent teams trying to drive an initiative through the organization. It's really been the whole organization kind of coming together, which is really cool. It's been so impactful. And I did want to ask another question a little bit to go a little deeper on the experiences, because I know for a lot of organizations, as they're thinking about kind of the gig economy and how to staff people on projects based on skills and things like that, everyone's kind of, or a lot of folks are trying to figure out what kind of programs they can stand up to enable that in a more structured way. And I loved when you were thinking about the experiences piece of the program, you mentioned in the past about the 4 S's.
Oh yeah.
Could you maybe just speak a little bit about that? Because I think that's I think the way that you structured that was really clever.
Yeah, and we like just to be memorable, to kind of pick something that's just a thought. So I hope I can remember it now. So we had stretch assignments, shadowing, secondments, and then stay was the 4th one. So when we talked about a stay, that was like a full transfer, and actually at the time when we were thinking about that, we were actually thinking about global mobility and how do we actually get people to move into new brands. And you know what was really interesting, I think, for me is, and again, a total learning of, when you're immersed in something, you just think that this stuff is clear, like everybody understands. The amount of people who didn't understand what a stretch assignment was really, that was such an eye-opener for me, right? Because actually that is a quick win that a manager and their and their team member can agree straight away, like, I'm going to get you working on a project that I know is going to take you out of your comfort zone, and I'm going to support you on that. If people don't understand that that is a stretch assignment and there's a development opportunity there, one, they don't reflect on it and kind of think about, when I think about my portfolio career, I don't pick it up and badge it up and think about how do I position this on my CV. But two, I think, you know, the conversation around how do I support you to be successful in this role doesn't happen. And that's really key, right? Because if you are being stretched, particularly if you're being put into something that's quite visible, you need agreement on how you are going to be successful there, or else if you do it and you fail, like that's not going to, like, you know, incentivize you to look for these opportunities as well. So I think helping, just educating people about what a stretch assignment is and how you can do it and how you have a kind of conversation about it, like that was really, really important. And then shadowing as well, like that's something that's, I could just give somebody a call and say, look, can I spend a day with you? Can I just sit in on a couple of your calls? So it's nearly like kind of giving the permission to have these conversations or to think about kind of career or opportunities in these ways. Whereas the secondments and the kind of the stay, those moves, they were tricky. They are tricky. So like obviously in our business, we work across multiple jurisdictions, there's different legislation, there's tax implications, etc. So there's a lot to think about in terms of how you can kind of enable that. And again, I would say that's why early on we got some of the early wins with, you know, the quicker wins, whereas it's taken us a lot longer to do this. And it's still challenging. Like we, you know, from an international mobility perspective, we do need to be quite thoughtful about where people need to be located.
Yeah, and it's building the ecosystem and it takes time, right? So building the ecosystem for all of those kind of experiences so people can kind of get the like you said, just gain the kind of understanding and knowledge of how to do the jobs inside their current role before making a transition full time. I think yeah, not something that is easy to do overnight for sure. But I know we've talked a lot about all the things that have gone really well and all of the cool and exciting stuff. But with any large scale program rollout or big change initiative, inevitably there are challenges or roadblocks that we kind of run into along the way. What's that look like for you as you've kind of rolled this program out?
Yeah, in our case, the language really mattered. Once we started talking about skills, everybody was asking, well, what's a skill? What do you mean by that? And actually, when we were doing work sort of on critical skills and trying to identify critical skills, what we sort of learned was, like, sometimes when people are talking about skills, they're actually talking about a role. Like, so you could have a job description, a job role in your organization that is actually highly critical, and that whole role is critical. Or it could be one tiny element of that. Like, so it could be, like in our case, like a programming language that's really important because it actually kind of links into our systems, etc. So when we were talking about skills, that sort of, you know, is it that granular level skill? Is it, and then, you know, and another kind of way of thinking about it, so competency, like a collection of skills that kind of ladder up to that? Or is it actually like it's a whole role that we're talking about? There's just varying levels of, you know, enthusiasm around skills and kind of skills practices and you know, the skills-based organization. And so I think two things have pushed it. One is COVID, right? So in COVID, massive crisis, massive pandemic, people thought really creatively and moved people around the business, right? So then I think there was this element like, well, we did it there, so I mean, of course we could do it, but we're not. I mean, I know, like, you know, everyone kind of says now transformation as usual, but like that was a very unusual scenario, and you had a lot of people available who weren't doing another job, right? So I think that's kind of different, but I think that it certainly was a good use case and kind of demonstrated you know, the skills kind of based approach and being flexible and agile there, it can work. And then I think the other thing is, like, you know, a lot of the consultancies talk about kind of the skills based organization can work in that way really easily, right? Because they do work on projects all the time. So actually, here's a project to be done, here's the people that could do that project, and I'm constantly moving people to projects, like that works quite well for them. So I think in, you know, your normal organization, the full on I'm going down skills based approach route, I don't know. Anyway, for us, we're definitely not there, and you know, we're not willing, we're not saying rip up all the job descriptions and let's just, you know, we'll be very flexible and very agile. So I think, you know, it's important though, because I think people in the organization will sit on different kind of sides of that. And you know, I think like tech tend to be a little bit more, this has been my experience and just from talking to kind of peers and others, tech tend to be a little bit more up for this than other parts of the business. And I think it's because the skills are changing really fast. They're so critical, and they're used to working in this way. Actually, they're used to aligning people, you know, to squads or whatever. So they're probably a little bit more up for it. And so I think, you know, again, learning for that is go to where the energy is, go to where the business is trying to solve a problem. Really kind of try to kind of leverage that, as opposed to maybe starting in an area of the business where there's not so much appetite for it. We sort of felt, look, we would like people to be in one system and have things connected, and that would be smooth. But actually, if the one system doesn't do that, then you're bolting on another system. And how do they talk to each other? And then, you know, they're not cheap, right? So how do you demonstrate the value before the investment? Now, I do think that a lot of the organizations that I've spoken to, they are very up for doing pilots and proofs of concepts, and I think that's kind of important. And I would say, you know, we're still early enough on in our journey there. We're lucky that we are a big organization and we have access to some tools that's allowing us to experiment a little bit. But for people who are kind of maybe starting with this and they don't have technology, there's definitely a lot you can do without tech, just by leveraging AI or starting small, even just, you know, like before we were using anything to do with a system, like just collating skills on spreadsheets and using that to kind of match, you know, that's something that works. So everyone says this, it's a journey. It's not a once and done. And, you know, it's a dynamic, it's evolving. And I think just being comfortable with that, that it's not, you know, you need to stay the course, but just chunking it down into maybe dealing with the task that's ahead of you. Like, I think that's kind of helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you say, it's a like skills-based organization, and this focus on skills, like it's nothing new, but it is a spectrum. And like ultimately what we're trying to do is map the capability and skills of our workforce with the right work so that we drive the best outcomes. And like that way that's going to shake out is going to look different depending on the type of organization and the industry that you operate in. But at least now we've got the tools and the technology that actually allows us to do that at scale, and saves, you know, the people org from, you know, spending hundreds and hundreds of hours in spreadsheets, which is kind of the way that we would have had to do it in the past. But speaking of outcomes a little, and I know you mentioned this earlier on around the score on the engagement survey, particularly around career development. When you started this, or kind of as you were at the inception of the program, were there, other than the career development in score, were there any other clear outcomes or impacts that you were hoping to make on the business with the deployment of the program?
Yeah, so the other one that we're keen to impact is the internal mobility rate. So ours is pretty good now. So we're at a 35% internal mobility rate, which you know, we have ambitions to go further than that. But I think the average, I know from just looking at benchmarking, the average in tech is around 25 to 30%. So the career pathing score, we've seen the increase in that. So that improved. You know, we more than doubled that. And then the internal mobility rate, we have improved it. Definitely, it's improved over the last little while. But actually, we need some technical changes now to make things a little bit slicker and easier for people to see. So like coming back to what I said about, like, it's up to you to drive your career, but what we can do is we can enable the, you know, the environment to kind of support you with that. There's some really nice little things that we're working on around, like kind of prompts and suggestions and things like that, that we want to place information in front of people when they need it, so they don't have to be actively kind of thinking, I'm, you know, thinking about a new role now. Like, how do we help them to sort of see these things just in the course of their day or in the course of their interaction with a system?
I love that. Now we cannot have a conversation about the future of the industry without talking about AI, and you touched off it there a moment ago. So I would love to hear from you. How have you been thinking about two things? One, the upskilling of your colleagues around AI, and then also how to leverage AI as a tool inside the business to kind of drive the outcomes. Yeah, any thoughts there?
So I think when we think about AI, I think about those two things. So it's AI literacy, it's the active use cases, and then actually the third one is, what's the impact that AI is going to have on people's roles in the future, and then how do we sort of plan for that, and whether that is upskilling or reskilling, etc. How do we start to kind of think about that? So in terms of use cases, so Flutter has a kind of an AI forum, and then underneath that, then there's kind of active communities then in sort of each discipline. So I sit on the AAI forum for HR. So within our organization, we've done some use cases within HR. So we've done, so we're looking, the usual things, but building like chatbots to kind of, go through our documentation, etc. And we've been thinking about things like internal mobility processes and how you would, if somebody wants to ask a question, then it returns the right information to them and kind of makes suggestions. We've also done a co-pilot trial as well within HR, so that's been really helpful. So that really is like we had 17 people on the trial. I was one of them. I love it. Like it really helps. So we had that enterprise license where it can access your work stuff as well as the external environment, and productivity gains. It's more time being able to kind of be creative instead of kind of having to do stuff that just took time but maybe wasn't such value add. And we're looking at other use cases around kind of CV screening and things like that. And then in terms of kind of upskilling, so there is a team kind of thinking about like overall how we do this at Flutter, but obviously we've been talking to Udemy as well about how we can target courses that are relevant for different functions. There's we've a kind of a good learning allowance as well. So we provide an external learning fund allowance for people to take external courses, and actually quite a lot of people are doing an AI course in UCD. We've been experimenting with like lots of different things, and as part of our pilot, we sort of had a community then who would come back and share some of the things that they'd been learning and how they've been using it, etc. So one of the things that we're sort of thinking about is how do we then maybe look at an open role but source candidates for that. So technology can do that, but if you don't have technology, is there a way that you can do that? And we've been able to kind of use AI to look at roles and then basically surface employees who have the kind of would meet the requirements for that, and give us a percentage of looking at their role and this role and understanding the percentage overlap. And what that means then is we can have our TA team then have a kind of more targeted conversation there. So that's something that we're kind of quite excited about, because I think we are really trying to ensure that our TA team are almost like an internal like agency, as early days as everybody else, but certainly starting to think about it now, and loads going on. Like there's an AI community on Slack that I can see, and it's just so much happening in all the different areas.
Yeah, it's wild. It's just the best thing ever. Honestly, it's like having a little personal assistant on your computer to help with everything every day. It's yeah, and there's
absolutely. Do you know, I heard somebody said to me like, you need to think about it like a junior, like quite a junior person on your team. But I think that's getting better. Like AI is just it's learning, it's getting smarter, etc. So I don't know. It could be somebody like compared to somebody a little bit more senior, like some of the stuff that it's helped me with or my team with, like it's a tight. And coming back to the point about how do you get L&D to have that impact, you need to make sure that they have the time to do that value add stuff that AI can't do, like the human stuff that like actually makes a difference. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm definitely in the camp of this is amazing and we can do loads with this. And I think it's going to change all of our roles, like some roles more than others. So I don't know that we have too much of a choice in terms of not keeping up with it.
Honestly, it does get to know you spookily well, though. So after
spookily well, yeah.
Whether my AI actually knows me better than my husband does at this stage. We're almost, I know we're almost at time, and we are the only thing standing between you and a holiday, Niamh. So I want to be conscious of your time, but I do have two final questions for you. You've worn many hats throughout your career. You've led so many different transformational change initiatives. What's your number one tip for others who are embarking on a new strategic initiative or a program?
Don't boil the ocean. I don't know if that's a phrase that makes sense to everyone, but it here it just means don't try to do everything, right? It's like, so okay, what's the end goal and where do I want to get to, but kind of chunking that down into manageable steps. Like there's so much more complexity in work now. Almost nothing is kind of a straightforward plan. So I think just being kind of thoughtful about maybe where the quick wins are, where you can demonstrate impact. And I do think what would show that this is a success, so that more people are interested in kind of doing this, and people say this all the time, like, but then you do it in one team and a team looks over the fence and says, I want that. And then all of a sudden, okay, I've got traction, So I think it is being thoughtful about that, working with the business to understand the problem to be solved, involving them in the solution, and kind of, thinking about that is really important. I think just being able to sort of beaver away on their own and sort of push things out to the business, like, those days are gone, right? So I do think it really is thinking about a partnership with the business and understanding what the business problem is to be solved, and just going to where the energy is. By the energy, I mean usually the money, right? How does this actually help us solve a problem, either save cost or access revenue? I think being thoughtful about that is important.
Love that. And then my last question for you is, what is your current favorite learning or productivity hack?
Can I say AI?
You can say it's also mine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I definitely am using AI. So I heard again when we did our Copilot trial, somebody was saying, like, using it like a ChatGPT or Copilot, or a Gen AI, instead of going to like your regular kind of Google search engine, like, that'll save you 10 minutes. Now, if you tot up the amount of time you need to go and do a search, especially if you're creating something or starting something and you need to understand, like, how this looks out in the world, like, so that's really helpful. The other one, which is a bit more old school, but I really I listen, and I wasn't a podcast person, I have to say, notwithstanding my appearance on your podcast today, but a few years ago probably didn't make time for that. But if I'm now driving to work, I will try and listen to a podcast, at least on one of the ways there. And I think there's just so much out there, like, and looking inwards to your own organization is probably not going to help you to understand, like, the kind of the breadth of things that are available and the challenges as well. I think I tend to like to listen to things that are quite real and talk about, well, it's not easy and here's how you might navigate that. So I think the quick way to get learning into your day, broaden your horizons a little bit, learn something, and spend the time well when you're in your car.
Yeah, it's like, use the time when you have it. The days are busy, so you got to fit it in where you can. Well, Niamh,
Exactly.
thank you so much for being here again today. So inspiring to hear about the journey that you're on at Flutter and PokerStars, and the culture of mobility and shared value that you're creating for the business through skill development. It's been amazing. So thank you so much again for being here, and until next time.
Thanks, Caoimhe.